I discovered my husband had a mistress in the most unexpected way. My shampoo kept running out way too fast. When I started looking into it, I found out he'd been bringing her into our house. Since she loved using my shampoo so much, I added a little special mix to the bottle. That Saturday, when she stepped out of the shower and looked in the mirror, I still remember the exact moment the bottom fell out of my world. It wasn't a shouting match, or a dramatic confession, it was a half-empty bottle of shampoo, and it whispered the darkest secret my husband had been keeping from me for months. You see, I've always considered myself a pretty good observer. After 15 years of marriage, I could tell if Dylan had a rough day just by how he'd toss his keys on the counter. I even noticed the neighbor's cat had kittens before anyone else on the block. So when my expensive shampoo and conditioner started vanishing way too fast, I definitely noticed. That Wednesday morning, standing in the shower, I frowned. I tilted the sleek purple bottle, and barely enough of that thick, luxurious liquid coated my palm. I'd just bought this bottle 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks. And it was practically empty. At $58 a pop, this wasn't just annoying, it was becoming an expensive, baffling mystery. The familiar lavender and jasmine scent filled the steamy bathroom as I massaged it into my thick black hair. I'd splurged on this brand, a little luxury I allowed myself, despite Dylan's occasional digs about my unnecessary expenses. My hair felt like silk, and at 38, with hints of gray starting to show, I felt I deserved a few indulgences. What made it so strange, though, was Dylan couldn't possibly be using it. My husband of 15 years had lost most of his hair by his mid-30s. Now, at 43, he kept what little remained closely shaved. His gleaming scalp required nothing more than regular soap. He'd often joked about saving money on haircuts and hair products. A silver lining, he called it, to premature baldness. I rinsed my hair, stepped out, and wrapped myself in a fluffy white towel. As I wiped condensation from the mirror, my reflection stared back, my intelligent green eyes magnified by my glasses. I'm severely nearsighted, you see, so they go back on almost immediately. It's a lifelong habit. Dylan was in the kitchen when I went in, already dressed in his charcoal suit, scrolling on his phone, sipping coffee from his favorite mug, the one I gave him for our 10th anniversary. He barely looked up as I poured myself a cup. Dylan, have you noticed anything strange about the bathroom supplies lately? I asked casually, stirring honey into my coffee. His fingers paused momentarily over his screen. Strange how? My shampoo is almost gone already. I just bought it 2 weeks ago. It should last at least a month. I watched his face carefully, noticing a slight tightening around his eyes. Maybe you've been using more than you realize, he replied, still not meeting my gaze. Or maybe there's a leak in the bottle. I took a slow sip. Maybe, I let the word hang there. It's just odd because it's happening with my conditioner, too. And you obviously don't use either. He glanced up then, his expression briefly unreadable, before shrugging. I don't know what to tell you, Chris. Maybe check if the bottles are cracked. I nodded, watching as he quickly drained his cup and stood. I should get going. Big client meeting today. He leaned down to kiss my cheek, a perfunctory gesture that had replaced the passionate kisses we once shared. Don't wait up tonight. I might have to work late again. Third time this week, I observed mildly. End of quarter rush, he replied, already moving toward the door. Love you. Love you, too, I said automatically. But he was already gone, the door closing with a decisive click. I sat alone at the kitchen table, my coffee growing cold as I stared at the empty chair. We'd fallen into a routine over the years, comfortable, predictable, safe. I worked from home as a freelance web designer, he climbed the corporate ladder. No children, by mutual agreement at first, and then it just never seemed like the right time. Now, at 38, I sometimes wondered if we'd made the right choice. That evening, I was alone again. The silence was broken only by the ping of my laptop. Dylan had texted around 6 to confirm another late night. I ordered Thai food for one and was eating it straight from the container while finalizing a client project when my phone rang. Hey, sis, how's it going? April's cheerful voice filled the kitchen. April, Dylan's younger sister by 7 years, had always been more like a sister to me than an in-law. I smiled despite my melancholy. Oh, you know, the usual. Working. Existing. That bad, huh? April's perception was uncanny. Where's my brother? Working late again. Apparently. I tried to keep the edge from my voice. End of quarter rush, according to him. April's thoughtful pause spoke volumes. Listen, I'm going to be in your area this weekend. Want to do something? Dylan can join us if he's not too busy being important. I laughed. I'd love that. I need some April therapy. It's a date then. Saturday brunch. Perfect. After we hung up, I felt slightly better. At least I had something to look forward to. I finished my work around 9, then ran a bath, deciding to pamper myself. As I reached for my fancy bath bomb, another gift I'd bought myself, I noticed it, too, was almost gone. The package of 12 reduced to just 3, though I'd only used 2 myself. A strange, cold feeling settled in my stomach. First the shampoo, now this. I tried to dismiss my suspicions. Maybe I'd used more than I remembered. Maybe the package had fewer than I thought. But doubt had taken root, and I couldn't shake it. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The other side of the king-sized mattress was empty and cold. Dylan had texted again at 11, saying he'd crash at a hotel near the office since it was so late. Logical. Reasonable. And yet, my thoughts drifted to the shampoo, the bath bombs, the late nights, the distracted kisses. Small things, really. Nothing concrete. Nothing worth confronting him about. But together, they formed a picture I wasn't ready to see clearly. I turned on my side, pulling the covers tighter. Tomorrow, I'd look for more clues. Tomorrow, I'd pay closer attention. Tomorrow, I'd either confirm my suspicions or put them to rest for good. I didn't fall asleep until after midnight. And when I did, my dreams were filled with empty bottles and closed doors, just out of reach, no matter how fast I ran. The next morning, I woke to the sound of the shower. Dylan was home, having apparently arrived while I was still asleep. I glanced at the clock, 6:35. Unusually early for him. I lay still, listening to the water running, imagining my husband standing under the spray, washing away, what? Long hours at the office? Or something else entirely? When he emerged from the bathroom 20 minutes later, towel wrapped around his waist, he seemed surprised to see me awake. Morning, he said, offering a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Sorry if I woke you. It's fine, I replied, watching as he moved around the room, selecting a navy suit. How was your hotel? Fine, nothing special. He dressed quickly, his back to me. Just crashed and got up early to come home and shower before my 8 o'clock meeting. I nodded, though he wasn't looking at me to see it. Will you be late again tonight? Dylan paused, one arm in his suit jacket. Actually, no. Should be home at a normal time. Why don't I pick up some steaks? We could grill. Sounds nice, I said, feeling a flash of hope. Maybe I was overthinking everything. Maybe he really had just been busy with work. But as I entered the bathroom after he left, the first thing I noticed was that my shampoo bottle was now completely empty. That evening, I made a conscious effort to push my suspicions aside. I prepared a salad and roasted potatoes to accompany the steaks Dylan had promised to bring home. I even opened a bottle of our favorite Cabernet Sauvignon, letting it breathe. By 6:30, the table was set with our wedding china, something we hadn't used in months. Dylan arrived promptly at 7, a paper bag from the butcher shop in hand, greeting me with a more genuine smile than I'd seen in weeks. Wow, you went all out, he commented, surveying the dining room. Thought it would be nice, I replied, accepting his kiss on my cheek. It's been a while since we've had a real dinner together. For 2 hours, we almost felt like our old selves again. Dylan told stories about office politics. I shared amusing anecdotes about my latest client. We finished the bottle of wine. No mention of late nights, empty shampoo bottles, or hotel stays. By the time we were clearing the dishes, I had nearly convinced myself that my worries were unfounded. Nearly. As Dylan loaded the dishwasher, a chore he only performed when in an exceptionally good mood, his phone buzzed on the counter. I wouldn't have paid it any attention, except for the way he lunged for it, snatching it up before the screen could fully illuminate. Work? I asked casually, wiping down the countertop. Yeah, he muttered, fingers flying over the screen. Just a quick question about tomorrow's presentation. I nodded, saying nothing more as I finished cleaning. But the seed of doubt that had been planted continued to grow. Later that night, I awoke to darkness. The digital clock read 2:17. Dylan's soft snores came from beside me, his back turned. Unable to fall back asleep, I slipped out from under the covers and padded quietly to the kitchen for a glass of water. As I passed through the living room, I noticed Dylan's suit jacket draped over the arm of the sofa, his phone peeking out from the inner pocket. I hesitated, my throat suddenly dry for reasons unrelated to thirst. I'd never been the type to snoop. Always respected Dylan's privacy. We trusted each other. Or at least, we were supposed to. But the empty shampoo bottle, the late nights, the way he'd grabbed his phone earlier. Before I could second-guess myself, I reached for the device. The screen lit up at my touch, revealing a lock screen photo of the two of us from our Hawaii vacation 3 years ago. Happy, sun-kissed faces smiled back. I tried my birthday as the passcode, the same one he'd used for years. Nothing. I tried our anniversary date. Still nothing. Frowning, I pressed my thumb against the fingerprint scanner, a method that had always worked before when I needed to use his phone. Access denied. I stared at the screen in disbelief. Dylan had removed my fingerprint from his phone's security settings. When? Why? I returned the phone exactly as I'd found it and retreated to the kitchen, my hands shaking slightly as I filled a glass from the dispenser. The cold liquid did nothing to dispel the lump forming in my throat. In 15 years of marriage, we'd always had an open phone policy. Not that we regularly went through each other's devices, but there had never been secrets, never been locks the other couldn't open. Until now. The next morning, I awoke to an empty bed and a text message. Head to office early. Dinner at 7. I'll pick up Italian. Normal. Ordinary. As if nothing had changed. But everything had changed. I could feel it in the growing hollow in my chest, in the suspicions I could no longer ignore. I needed proof either to confirm my fears or, hopefully, to put them to rest. After a shower, during which I noted with grim satisfaction that Dylan had replaced my empty shampoo bottle with a new one, I dressed carefully in a flattering blouse and jeans, applied light makeup, and ran a straightener through my dark hair. I had a plan forming, though each step of it made my stomach clench with anxiety. At the upscale beauty supply store in the mall, I purchased an identical bottle of my shampoo and one of conditioner. The sales associate recognized me. Back so soon. Didn't you just buy these 2 weeks ago? I forced a smile. They're just so good. I'm going through them faster than expected. Actually, I'm thinking of getting some for my sister as a gift. Do you have any recommendations for similar products I could try? As the associate chatted enthusiastically, I nodded, but my mind raced. Someone else was using my products. Someone Dylan was bringing into our home. After leaving the store, I drove to the electronics shop 3 storefronts down. 20 minutes and $237 later, I walked out with a small security camera, disguised as a decorative shelf ornament, designed to blend perfectly with our master bathroom's minimalist aesthetic. My heart pounded as I installed the device that afternoon, positioning it on the shelf across from the shower. It would notify me of any movement detected when activated. This is insane, I whispered to myself as I tested the camera's viewing angle. I'm spying on my own husband. But I couldn't stop now. I needed to know. I spent the rest of the day alternating between work projects and checking the new bottle of shampoo I'd placed in the shower. I'd marked the level with a tiny dot of clear nail polish on the outside of the bottle, invisible unless you were looking for it, but unmistakable to my examining eye. By the time Dylan arrived home with takeout from our favorite Italian restaurant, I had composed myself enough to greet him with a convincing smile. We ate pasta at the kitchen island, making small talk about our days. If Dylan noticed anything unusual about my behavior, he didn't comment. Any plans this weekend? He asked casually, twirling linguine around his fork. I took a sip of water before answering. Actually, yes. April's coming by for brunch on Saturday. You're welcome to join us if you're not busy. Dylan nodded. I should be able to make it. Where are you meeting? That new place on Maple Street. Supposed to have amazing eggs Benedict. Sounds good. What time? 11. The conversation shifted, but my mind remained fixed on Saturday. Not because of brunch with April, but because of what I planned to do afterward. If my suspicions were correct, Dylan would find some excuse to be out of the house for several hours on Saturday afternoon. He always did, claiming he needed to go to the gym or run errands. And this time, I would know exactly what happened in our home while I was gone. Friday passed in a blur of client calls and nervous anticipation. Dylan came home at his usual time, and we watched a movie together on the couch, my head resting on his shoulder like old times. He smelled of his familiar cologne. And when his arm wrapped around me, I almost broke down and confronted him then and there. But I held back. Without proof, it would be his word against my suspicions. I needed to be certain. Saturday morning arrived bright and clear. I woke before Dylan and slipped quietly from bed to prepare coffee. While waiting for the pot to brew, I checked my phone. No notifications from the bathroom camera. Either no one had used that shower since I'd installed it, or Dylan had discovered the device and disabled it. The latter thought sent a chill through me. But when Dylan shuffled into the kitchen in his pajama pants, rubbing sleep from his eyes, his behavior seemed perfectly normal. He accepted the mug of coffee I offered with a sleepy thanks and joined me at the table. "Still on for brunch?" he asked between sips. "Absolutely." April texted last night to confirm. Dylan nodded, scrolling through news headlines on his tablet. "I might not stay the whole time. Thought I'd hit the gym afterward, maybe stop by the office to finish up some paperwork." I kept my expression neutral, even as my heart rate accelerated. "On a Saturday? You've been working so much lately." He shrugged. "End of quarter crunch. It'll calm down soon, I promise." "Sure," I replied, rising to rinse my empty mug in the sink. My back to him, I allowed myself a moment of raw emotion, my eyes closing briefly against the pain of his casual lies. Then I straightened my shoulders and turned around with a smile. I should start getting ready. April always arrives early. Brunch with April was a welcome distraction. My sister-in-law had always been perceptive, but today, I was grateful that April dominated the conversation with stories about her job as an elementary school principal. Dylan, as predicted, begged off after an hour, kissing my cheek and promising to see me at home later. "Is everything okay?" April asked the moment he was out of earshot. "You seem distracted." I toyed with my napkin. "Everything's fine. Just busy with work." April's skeptical expression said she didn't believe a word of it. But she didn't press further. "Well, if you need to talk, I'm here. No matter what." Those words, "no matter what," nearly broke my composure. Instead, I changed the subject, asking about April's latest dating disaster, knowing it would launch her into another animated story. 2 hours later, I said goodbye to April with a tight hug, promising to call her soon. Then, instead of heading home as I normally would, I drove to a coffee shop 3 blocks from our house, ordered a large Americano, and opened my laptop as if settling into work. In reality, I was watching the security camera feed on my phone, hidden partially behind my computer screen. For over an hour, nothing happened. The bathroom remained empty, the house quiet. I was beginning to think I had been wrong after all, when a notification pinged. Motion detected. My fingers trembled as I tapped the alert, and the live feed filled my screen. Someone was entering the bathroom. Not Dylan. A woman. Young. Blonde. Stunning. She moved with the confidence of someone familiar with the space, setting a designer purse on the counter before beginning to undress. I watched, frozen, as the stranger, who couldn't be more than 28 or 29, stepped into the shower and reached directly for my new bottles of shampoo and conditioner. The betrayal, now confirmed beyond any doubt, hit me like a physical blow. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. The coffee shop around me faded to background noise as I stared at the screen, watching a complete stranger use my shower, my expensive products, moving through my home as if she belonged there. The woman finished her shower, wrapped herself in one of our fluffy towels, my towel, and left the bathroom, presumably heading to the bedroom. I couldn't bear to watch anymore. I closed the app with shaking fingers, packed up my laptop, and sat in my car for 20 minutes, trying to calm my racing heart enough to drive. I had my answer now. The mystery of the disappearing shampoo had been solved in the worst possible way. I drove aimlessly for nearly an hour, my vision occasionally blurring with unshed tears. I refused to cry. Not yet. Crying meant acceptance, and I wasn't ready to accept that my 15-year marriage had been reduced to secret bathroom cameras and stolen shampoo. Eventually, I found myself parked at a scenic overlook outside of town, the same spot where Dylan had proposed all those years ago. The irony wasn't lost on me. I sat on the hood of my car, watching the sun begin its descent, and finally allowed myself to think clearly about what I had seen. The woman was beautiful. All blonde. Probably a decade younger than me. The kind of woman who turned heads when she walked into a room. The kind of woman Dylan would notice. My phone buzzed with a text from my husband. "Heading home now. Want me to pick up anything for dinner?" So casual. So normal. As if there wasn't currently a stranger in our home, using our shower, probably lying in our bed. The bed where I had slept every night for 15 years. Where Dylan and I had made love. Had whispered dreams to each other in the darkness. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened the security camera app again, watching as the blonde woman, now dressed in form-fitting jeans and a silky blouse, applied makeup at my vanity. She was using my makeup brushes, my foundation, my mascara. The violation was breathtaking in its thoroughness. A notification from my doorbell camera popped up. Dylan was home. I watched as he entered the house, calling out something I couldn't hear. Moments later, he appeared in the bathroom doorway behind the blonde woman, wrapping his arms around her waist and kissing her neck as she smiled at him through the mirror. I closed the app, suddenly feeling nauseous. I needed a plan. Confronting them now, while I was emotional and they were together, would only end in chaos. And despite the rage simmering beneath my skin, I had always prided myself on my self-control. This situation called for something more calculated than a dramatic confrontation. By the time I pulled into April's driveway 40 minutes later, I had composed myself enough to explain the situation without breaking down. April answered the door in sweatpants, her expression shifting from surprise to concern as she took in my pale face. "I need to stay here tonight," I said simply. "And I need your help." Inside, seated at April's kitchen counter with a glass of whiskey neither of us normally drank, I showed her the video footage. April's face cycled through shock, disgust, and finally a cold anger I'd never seen before. "That absolute bastard," April whispered, her knuckles white around her own glass. "In your house. In your bed." She looked up, eyes flashing. "Tell me what you need." "Anything. I need somewhere to stay this weekend, and I need to go shopping tomorrow." My voice was steadier than I expected. "I have a plan." April didn't ask questions. She simply nodded and showed me to the guest room. As I lay in the unfamiliar bed that night, my phone buzzed repeatedly with texts and calls from Dylan, each more concerned than the last. "Where are you? Are you okay? Please call me when you get this. Chris, I'm getting worried. Please let me know you're safe." I sent a single text in response. "Staying at a friend's. Need some space. We'll call tomorrow." His reply came instantly. "Is everything okay? Did something happen?" The audacity almost made me laugh. Did something happen? Only the complete destruction of our marriage, our home, our life together. Only the revelation that the man I had loved and trusted for 15 years had been bringing another woman into our bed. "Everything's fine," I wrote back. "Just needed a break. Good night." I turned off my phone before he could respond again. Sunday morning found April and me at a beauty supply store, examining the selection of hair products with critical eyes. "Are you sure about this?" April asked, picking up a box of platinum blonde hair dye. "It seems extreme." "I'm sure," I replied, adding a bottle of industrial-strength hair removal cream to our basket. He brought her into our home. Used her to humiliate me. Called me a fool in my own house. My voice remained calm, but April recognized the dangerous glint in my eyes. "I just don't want you to do something you'll regret," April said carefully. I gave her a sideways glance. "The only thing I regret is not realizing sooner what was happening right under my nose." I picked up a bottle of color-stripping solution and added it to our growing collection. "Besides, I'm not hurting anyone. I'm just improving my shampoo." By Sunday afternoon, I had created my special concoction, carefully mixing the hair removal cream and color stripper into my expensive shampoo and conditioner bottles, making sure to preserve enough of the original product to maintain its distinctive scent and texture. The bathroom in April's guest room now smelled like a hair salon, but the resulting mixture looked perfectly normal in the bottles. "What now?" April asked as we sealed the containers. "Now we wait." I checked my phone, which I had finally turned back on, to find 17 missed calls and over 30 text messages from Dylan. The most recent one, sent an hour ago, informed me that he would be working late tonight and would see me tomorrow. I knew exactly what that meant. He was giving the blonde woman one more night in their bed before I returned home. Perfect. On Monday morning, I hugged April goodbye, promising to call with updates. "Are you sure you don't want me to come with you?" April asked, concern evident in her voice. "I'm sure. This is something I need to do alone." I loaded my overnight bag into my car and checked my appearance in the rearview mirror. Despite everything, I looked surprisingly good. My dark hair shining, green eyes clear behind my glasses, chin held high. Whatever happened next, I would face it with dignity. The house was empty when I arrived home. Dylan had already left for work. I moved through the rooms with new eyes, noticing small changes that had previously escaped my attention. A different arrangement of pillows on the bed. A wine glass in the dishwasher that wasn't from our set. A faint, unfamiliar perfume lingering in the air. I unpacked my overnight bag, then methodically stripped the bed, stuffing the sheets into the washing machine with twice the normal amount of detergent. I scrubbed the shower, replaced my makeup brushes with new ones, and cleaned every surface the blonde woman might have touched. By noon, the house was spotless, with no trace of the intruder remaining, except for the improved shampoo and conditioner bottles, which I carefully returned to their place in the shower caddy. My phone rang just after 1. "Dylan, you're home," he said when I answered, his voice a mixture of relief and weariness. "Yes." I kept my response neutral, neither cold nor welcoming. "I've been worried sick, Chris. Where were you all weekend?" "I told you I needed some space. I stayed with a friend." A pause. "Which friend? You could have told me where you were going." I bit back a harsh laugh. The hypocrisy was staggering. I didn't realize I needed permission to have a weekend to myself. "That's not what I meant." Dylan backpedaled quickly. "I was just concerned. You've never disappeared like that before." "People change," I replied evenly. "Are you coming home for dinner tonight?" The abrupt change of subject seemed to throw him. Yes. I should be home by 6. "Good. I'll cook something." After hanging up, I sent a text to April. "Operation Shampoo is a go. He'll be home tonight, but I'm guessing she'll visit while I'm at my dentist appointment tomorrow afternoon." April's response came quickly. "Be careful and call me if you need anything." The evening with Dylan was an exercise in self-control. I prepared a simple meal of grilled chicken and vegetables, responding to his cautious conversation with pleasant but non-committal answers. If he noticed anything different about my demeanor, he didn't mention it. He seemed relieved that I wasn't questioning his weekend activities or my own absence, taking my apparent forgiveness at face value. "I missed you," he said as we cleared the dinner dishes, attempting to pull me into an embrace. I allowed a brief hug before stepping away. "I have a headache. Think I'll turn in early tonight." Disappointment flashed across his face, but he nodded. "Of course. Get some rest." In bed, I lay with my back to him, listening to his breathing slowly even out into sleep. When I was certain he wouldn't wake, I carefully reached for his phone on the nightstand. As expected, it was still locked. My fingerprint no longer recognized. But now I had a different approach. Gently lifting his hand, I pressed his thumb against the sensor. The phone unlocked instantly, revealing a home screen with several notifications, mostly work emails and news alerts. I navigated to his messaging app, looking for conversations with unknown numbers or suspicious contact names. I found what I was looking for under a contact labeled BM Photography. Clearly, a thinly veiled reference to Brittany McAllister. The most recent exchange had been that morning. "Dylan, she's back home. Not sure what's going on, but she seems fine. Almost too fine. Brittany, did she say where she was all weekend?" "Dylan, just with a friend. Didn't push it." "Brittany, smart. Are we still on for tomorrow?" "Dylan, yes. She has a dentist appointment at 2 o'clock. Should be gone for at least an hour." "Brittany, perfect. Miss you already. Last night was amazing." "Dylan, it was. See you tomorrow, beautiful." My stomach churned, but I forced myself to keep reading, scrolling up through days of messages, intimate exchanges, explicit photos, plans for their meetings. I found the conversation from the day I had discovered the shampoo issue. "Brittany, so the dummy finally noticed her fancy shampoo disappearing." "Dylan, yeah, mentioned it this morning. Told her maybe there was a leak in the bottle." "Brittany, well, it is amazing shampoo. My hair has never looked better. Worth every penny she paid." The casual cruelty took my breath away. They weren't just having an affair. They were laughing at me. Mocking me in my own home. Using my things. Sleeping in my bed. And all the while, Dylan had been playing the role of devoted husband, kissing my cheek each morning, asking about my day, sleeping beside me at night after spending the afternoon with his mistress. Carefully, I placed the phone back exactly as I had found it and returned to my side of the bed. Sleep wouldn't come, but that was fine. I had confirmation now. And tomorrow, while I pretended to be at a dentist appointment, Brittany McAllister would receive a surprise that would make her regret ever touching my shampoo. The next day unfolded according to plan. I left the house at 1:45, telling Dylan I had a 2 o'clock dental cleaning. Instead of driving to the dentist, however, I parked at a coffee shop with a clear view of our street, watching through my car window as a sleek silver convertible pulled into our driveway at precisely 2:15. Brittany stepped out, sunglasses perched on her perfect blonde hair, a small overnight bag in hand. She let herself in with a key Dylan must have given her, and disappeared inside. I waited, sipping my coffee as the minutes ticked by, imagining the scene playing out in my bathroom. The shower turning on. The expensive shampoo being poured into a palm. The luxurious lather. The blissful ignorance. At 3:30, I drove home, timing my arrival for when Dylan would expect me back from the dentist. I parked in the driveway, noting with satisfaction that the silver convertible was gone. Perfect timing. Dylan was in the kitchen when I entered, seemingly engrossed in his laptop. "How was the dentist?" he asked without looking up. "Fine," I replied, hanging my purse on the hook by the door. "The usual cleaning. No cavities." Good, he mumbled, eyes still fixed on his screen. I moved through the house with casual purpose, noting the subtle signs of Brittany's visit. A damp towel hung slightly askew. The faint scent of unfamiliar perfume. In the bathroom, I checked the shampoo and conditioner bottles. Both had been used, the levels noticeably lower than when I had left. The trap was sprung. Now, all I had to do was wait for the results. The effects of my special shampoo formula didn't take long to manifest. The very next morning, while I was preparing breakfast, my phone chimed with a notification from the bathroom security camera. I had almost forgotten I'd left it running. Excusing myself to the bedroom, I checked the footage to find Dylan on the phone, his voice hushed but clearly agitated. "What do you mean, emergency? Can't you just wear a hat?" A pause as he listened. "That bad? Are you sure it's not just, I don't know, an allergic reaction or something?" Another pause. Okay, I'll come over, but I have to make up some excuse to Christine. Give me 30 minutes. I quickly closed the app and returned to the kitchen, arranging my features into a mask of domestic tranquility just as Dylan entered, his expression tense. "Hey, something came up at work. One of the junior associates messed up some client files, and I need to go sort it out." On a Wednesday morning. I raised an eyebrow, the picture of innocent confusion. "Can't it wait until after breakfast?" "Unfortunately, not." He was already grabbing his keys from the counter. "It's time sensitive. Not sure how long it'll take. I'll text you." Of course, I nodded, watching him rush out the door without even a perfunctory kiss goodbye. Once his car pulled away, I allowed myself a small, satisfied smile. Phase 1 of my plan was complete. Later that afternoon, while working on a website for a client, I received a text from April. "Can you talk? It's important." I stepped away from my computer and called my sister-in-law immediately. "You will never believe who I just saw at Meridian Medical Plaza," April said without preamble when she answered. "Your husband's little girlfriend coming out of Dr. Morris's dermatology office wearing the biggest hat I've ever seen and enormous sunglasses." Even with all that, I could tell she was crying. I fought to keep my voice neutral. "Really? That's interesting. Christine." April's tone was knowing. "What exactly did you put in that shampoo?" "Just a little hair color remover and some depilatory cream," I replied innocently. "Nothing dangerous." "Well, whatever it was, it clearly worked." She looked absolutely devastated. April paused. "Are you going to confront Dylan now?" "Not yet," I said, my plan crystallizing further with each development. "I need one more piece of evidence first." That evening, Dylan came home late, his expression haggard. He claimed to have spent the day resolving the work crisis, but the faint scent of hospital antiseptic soap clung to his skin. He had clearly accompanied Brittany to her dermatology appointment. "Tough day?" I asked mildly, setting a plate of dinner in front of him. "You have no idea," he sighed, rubbing his temples. "Sometimes I think I'm surrounded by incompetence." I hummed noncommittally, watching him push food around his plate. "Anyone I know?" Dylan's head snapped up, eyes narrowing slightly before his expression smoothed. "No, just some junior staff. Not worth discussing." The next few days passed in a strange pantomime of normalcy. Dylan was distant, constantly checking his phone when he thought I wasn't looking. I pretended not to notice, going about my routine with placid efficiency while monitoring the security footage for any sign of Brittany's return. On Saturday morning, I announced casually over coffee, April invited me to spend the weekend at her lake house. Girls' getaway. I thought I'd go. We haven't had sister time in ages. Dylan's response was a touch too enthusiastic. "That sounds great. You deserve a break. When are you leaving?" After lunch, I replied, noting how quickly he reached for his phone, no doubt to text Brittany the good news. I'll be back Sunday evening. Perfect. Dylan smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from him in days. I've got some work to catch up on anyway. Work, right? I packed an overnight bag and kissed Dylan goodbye at 1 o'clock, driving directly to April's house, not her lake house, which didn't exist, but her suburban home 15 minutes away. By 2:30, we had set up a command center of sorts in April's living room, both of us hunched over my laptop as we monitored the bathroom camera feed. Are you sure you want to watch this? April asked, concern etching her features. It might be difficult. I need to see, I replied firmly. I need to know exactly what's been happening in my house. We didn't have to wait long. At 3:15, the camera captured Dylan leading Brittany into the master bathroom. Her appearance made both April and me gasp. The formerly luscious blonde hair was now a patchy disaster, with large sections significantly thinner than others, and the color a sickly combination of brassy orange and greenish blonde. Oh my God, April breathed. Your concoction did that. I nodded, a mixture of vindication and faint horror washing over me. I hadn't expected quite such dramatic results. On screen, Brittany was clearly distraught, her voice rising as she gestured wildly at her ruined hair. The dermatologist said it was some kind of chemical burn. Do you know how much the treatments are costing me? My agency has already put me on hiatus. I had to cancel 3 shoots this week. Dylan tried to calm her, his hands on her shoulders. Baby, I'm so sorry. We'll figure this out. Maybe Christine found out somehow and tampered with, don't you dare blame this on me. Brittany jerked away from his touch. I've been using that shampoo for months without any problems. This is your fault. You should have checked it or something. You know how important my hair is for my career. Your career. Dylan's voice took on an edge. What about my marriage? If Christine finds out about us. Oh, please. Brittany cut him off with a harsh laugh. Like you care about your marriage. You've been telling me for months how unhappy you are. How Christine doesn't understand you. How we're going to be together once you figure out the finances of the divorce. I felt as though I'd been slapped. Divorce, he had been planning to divorce me, and blaming me for our marital problems to his mistress. On the screen, Dylan was backpedaling. That's not what I meant. Of course, I care about my marriage. It's just complicated right now. Complicated? Brittany repeated flatly. Well, let me uncomplicate things for you. I'm not setting foot in this house again until you figure out what happened to my hair. I have a consultation with a specialist in New York on Monday. It's going to cost $5,000, which you're paying for, by the way. $5,000? Dylan's voice rose in alarm. Brittany, be reasonable. Reasonable? Her voice became shrill. Look at me, Dylan. I'm a model. Or I was until your wife's toxic shampoo destroyed my hair. The least you can do is pay for the treatments. April glanced at me, who sat stone-faced as I watched the argument unfold. You okay? She whispered. I nodded once, not trusting myself to speak. On screen, the argument continued to escalate until Brittany stormed out of the bathroom. Dylan, following close behind, both disappearing from the camera's view. Should we keep watching? April asked after a moment of silence. No, I finally said, closing the laptop. I've seen enough. That evening, while Dylan believed I was enjoying a carefree weekend at a lake house, I sat at April's dining table, methodically sorting through 15 years of financial records I had secretly downloaded from our shared cloud storage before leaving home. Credit card statements, bank accounts, investment portfolios. I examined everything with the detached precision of an auditor, making notes and highlighting discrepancies. What exactly are you looking for? April asked, setting a cup of tea beside me. Ammunition, I replied without looking up. And insurance. By Sunday morning, I had compiled a comprehensive financial history of our marriage, including several concerning discoveries, a separate checking account Dylan had opened 6 months ago, into which he had been transferring small amounts regularly, suspicious charges on his personal credit card at high-end restaurants and hotels on days he claimed to be working late, and most damning of all, recent searches in his browser history for divorce laws in our state and hidden assets during divorce. That bastard was planning to leave you, April said, looking over my findings, and probably trying to hide money before filing. Yes, I agreed, my voice remarkably steady, but he made a crucial mistake. What's that? He underestimated me. I gathered the documents into a neat folder. He forgot that I'm the one who organized our finances for 15 years. I know where every penny is. April studied my composed face. What are you going to do now? Now? I smiled, though the expression didn't reach my eyes. Now I go home and have a long overdue conversation with my husband. When I arrived home Sunday evening, rolling my overnight bag through the front door with deliberate noise, I found Dylan in the living room watching football, an empty pizza box on the coffee table. He looked up with practiced casualness. Hey, how was the lake house? There is no lake house, I replied calmly, setting my purse down. April doesn't have a lake house. Never has. Dylan's expression faltered. What? Then where were you? At April's regular house, watching you and your girlfriend argue about her ruined hair through my bathroom security camera. The color drained from Dylan's face so quickly that under different circumstances, I might have been concerned for his health. He opened his mouth, closed it, then opened it again. No words emerging. Don't bother denying it, I continued in the same calm voice, moving to sit in the armchair across from him. I have hours of footage. Very educational viewing. I particularly enjoyed the part where Brittany mentioned you've been planning to divorce me. Christine, I can explain. Can you? Can you explain why you've been bringing another woman into our home for months? Why you gave her a key to our house? Why you let her use my things? Sleep in my bed. Shower in my bathroom. Dylan ran a hand over his head, a nervous gesture I'd seen countless times during our marriage. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. I never meant to hurt you. And yet, here we are. I crossed my legs, smoothing my skirt with steady hands. Here's what's going to happen now, Dylan. I've compiled a complete record of our finances, including your pathetic attempts to hide money in that new checking account. I've documented every hotel charge, every late night at the office, and every visit Brittany made to our home. I've saved all the security footage to a cloud account that only I can access. Dylan's expression shifted from shock to weariness. What are you saying? I'm saying that tomorrow morning, I'll be calling Robert Jenkins. You remember him? My college friend who became a divorce attorney. We're going to have a very interesting conversation about marital assets and infidelity documentation. And then I'm going to file for divorce. Wait, Christine, please. We can work this out. Dylan leaned forward, desperation creeping into his voice. It was a mistake. Brittany means nothing to me. It was just what? A 15-year itch? A midlife crisis? Does it matter? My composure finally cracked, pain flashing across my face. You brought her into our home, Dylan. You let her use my things. You laughed with her about me being too stupid to notice. You planned to leave me while pretending everything was fine. What kind of person does that? Dylan had no answer, his shoulders slumping in defeat. I've already packed some of your clothes, I continued, my professional tone returning. You'll be staying at a hotel tonight. I expect you to be gone when I wake up tomorrow. My lawyer will contact you about arrangements for collecting the rest of your belongings. You're throwing me out. Just like that. Dylan's voice rose in disbelief. After 15 years. No, Dylan. You threw us away. Just like that. The moment you gave another woman a key to our home. I stood, signaling the end of the conversation. By the way, you might want to let Brittany know that the hair loss is likely to get worse before it gets better. The depilatory cream I mixed into the shampoo can continue working for several days. Some effects might be permanent. Dylan's jaw dropped. You did that to her hair on purpose. Consider it poetic justice. She liked my shampoo so much. I simply made her a special blend. I picked up my purse and headed toward the bedroom. Your suitcase is by the front door. I suggest you use it. That night, I slept alone in the king-sized bed I had shared with Dylan for 15 years. Instead of the emptiness I had expected to feel, a strange sense of peace settled over me. The worst had happened. My marriage was over. My trust shattered. And yet, I had survived. Not only survived, but reclaimed my power in a situation where I had been made to feel powerless. As I drifted toward sleep, my phone chimed with a text from April. How did it go? Are you okay? I typed back. He's gone. I'm better than okay. I'm free. And for the first time in months, I slept deeply and dreamlessly, unburdened by suspicion or doubt, or the weight of lies. Whatever came next would be entirely my choice. 1 year later, I stood in the bright, airy kitchen of my new bakery, Sweet Beginnings, carefully piping delicate rosettes onto a 3-tiered wedding cake. Early morning sunlight streamed through the large front windows, casting a golden glow over the pristine work surfaces. The scent of vanilla and freshly baked pastries filled the air, mingling with the rich aroma of brewing coffee from the small cafe area at the front of the shop. This space, my space, still felt like a dream sometimes. After the divorce was finalized 6 months ago, I had used my portion of the proceeds from selling our house to make 2 investments, a charming 2-bedroom cottage on the quieter side of town, and this bakery, which had quickly gained a reputation for having the best custom cakes and pastries within 50 miles. "That looks amazing," said Megan, the 23-year-old assistant I had hired 3 months ago when the business had grown too busy for me to manage alone. "Mrs. Edwards is going to love it." I stepped back to examine my work, adjusting my glasses as I scrutinized the delicate sugar flowers. "I think it needs a bit more shimmer on these petals," I murmured, reaching for the edible pearl dust. The bell above the shop door chimed, and Megan glanced at her watch. "That's odd. We don't open for another 30 minutes. "It's probably April," I replied without looking up. She said she might stop by this morning. But it wasn't April who appeared in the kitchen doorway a moment later. It was Brittany McAllister. My hands froze mid-motion, the pastry bag suspended above the cake as I stared at the woman who had once used my shampoo, slept in my bed, and contributed to the end of my marriage. Brittany looked markedly different from the stunning model in the security footage. Her once luxurious blonde hair was now cut in a severe chin-length bob, clearly a strategic choice to deal with the uneven regrowth, and she appeared thinner, her designer clothes hanging somewhat loosely on her frame. "Hello, Christine," Brittany said, her voice quieter than I remembered. "Your assistant let me in. I hope that's okay." I set the pastry bag down carefully, wiped my hands on my apron, and turned to Megan. "Would you mind watching the front for a few minutes and make sure Mrs. Edwards' cake delivery is prepared for noon?" Megan nodded, glancing curiously between the 2 women before retreating. "What are you doing here?" I asked once we were alone, my tone neither hostile nor welcoming. Simply direct. Brittany shifted uncomfortably, tucking a strand of her shortened hair behind her ear. "I wanted to see you in person. To apologize." "Apologize?" I repeated flatly. "It's been a year." "I know." Brittany's gaze dropped to the floor. It took me a long time to work up the courage, and to fully understand what I'd done. I leaned against the counter, crossing my arms. "And what exactly do you think you did, Brittany?" "I destroyed a marriage. I disrespected your home, your privacy. You. I was selfish and cruel." Brittany looked up, meeting my eyes directly. "There's no excuse for my behavior, but I want you to know that I've been in therapy for the past 8 months, trying to understand why I did what I did." I searched for signs of insincerity or manipulation, but found none. There was a rawness to Brittany now, a vulnerability that hadn't existed in the confident, entitled model who had once called me a dummy in text messages to Dylan. "And did you understand? I mean, truly understand?" Brittany nodded slowly. "Some of it. I was raised to value appearance above everything else. My worth was always tied to how I looked, how men responded to me. I chased validation in destructive ways." She gestured to her hair with a rueful smile. "Losing my hair, my identity, really, forced me to confront who I was beneath the surface. It wasn't pretty, but I found truth there. Despite myself, I felt a flicker of empathy. I remembered the devastation in Brittany's voice when she'd realized her modeling career was in jeopardy. At the time, it had seemed like justice. Now, with a year's distance and perspective, it seemed more like a young woman facing the consequences of her choices for perhaps the first time. "What happened with your career?" I asked, surprising myself with the question. "It's over," Brittany replied simply. "At least the modeling part. I lost all my contracts after the hair incident. Even when it started growing back, it wasn't the same. I wasn't the same." She paused. "I'm working in fashion photography now, behind the camera instead of in front of it. It's actually more fulfilling than modeling ever was." I nodded, unsure what to say. Part of me wanted to hold on to the anger, to remind Brittany of every hurtful text, every invasion of privacy, every moment of betrayal. But I recognized, with some surprise, that the rage that had once consumed me had largely burned itself out, leaving behind a calm wisdom I hadn't possessed before. "And Dylan?" I asked finally. "Are you still together?" Brittany let out a short, humorless laugh. "No, that ended about 2 weeks after you kicked him out." when I realized he was expecting me to take care of him emotionally while he was going through the divorce. She searched for the words. Weaker than I thought. Always looking for someone to validate him, to take care of his needs. I think that's why he needed both of us. You for stability, me for excitement. Once he couldn't have both, neither of us was enough. The assessment was surprisingly insightful. It matched my own realizations about my ex-husband in the months following our separation. I saw him about a month ago, actually, Brittany continued, at a coffee shop downtown. He didn't see me. He was with some redhead, touching her hand across the table, giving her that same intense, the only woman in the world, look he used to give me. Some people never change. I felt a strange sense of closure hearing this confirmation of what I'd already suspected, that Dylan's infidelity hadn't been about my shortcomings, but about his own. Why now? I asked, returning to Brittany's initial purpose. Why come apologize after all this time? Part of my therapy, Brittany admitted, making amends where possible. But also, she glanced around the bakery kitchen. I heard about your success, how you've built this amazing business from nothing. I wanted to see it, to see that something good came out of all that pain. I felt an unexpected warmth spread through my chest. My bakery was indeed something good, something I never would have pursued if my marriage had continued. In a strange way, the betrayal that had seemed like the end of my world had actually been the beginning of a better one. Would you like some coffee? I found myself asking. I just made a fresh pot. Brittany looked surprised, then grateful. I'd like that. Yes. 20 minutes later, April pushed open the door to Sweet Beginnings, instantly spotting me and Brittany sitting at a small table in the corner of the cafe area, deep in conversation. She stopped short, blinking in disbelief at the sight of her former sister-in-law sharing coffee with the woman who had helped destroy her marriage. What in the world? April muttered under her breath as she approached the table. I looked up, a smile spreading across my face. April, perfect timing. You remember Brittany, I'm sure. April's expression was priceless, a mixture of confusion, protectiveness, and barely contained curiosity. Vividly, she replied dryly, though I remember her with more hair. Brittany winced but nodded in acknowledgement. I deserved that. I gestured to an empty chair. Join us. Brittany was just about to leave. But I wanted to ask you something. Still looking puzzled, April sat down as Brittany gathered her purse and stood. Thank you for the coffee, Christine, and for listening. It means more than you know. Closure works both ways, I replied simply. Take care of yourself, Brittany. After Brittany had left, April turned to me with wide eyes. Okay, what just happened? Why were you having coffee with the blonde homewrecker? Please tell me this isn't some weird forgiveness thing where you're going to invite her and my idiot brother to Thanksgiving dinner. I laughed, the sound light and genuine. Nothing that dramatic. She came to apologize. I decided to hear her out. I shrugged. It was healing, in a way, for both of us, I think. April shook her head in amazement. You're a better person than I am. I would have poured that coffee over her head. A year ago, I might have, I admitted. But I've realized something important, April. Holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. I'm happy now. Genuinely happy. Why would I want to carry around all that bitterness? April studied me for a moment, then smiled softly. You really are happy, aren't you? It shows. You're glowing in a way you never did when you were with Dylan. I am, I confirmed, glancing around my bakery with pride. Which brings me to what I wanted to ask you. Remember how you mentioned your school's fundraiser needs a cake for their silent auction? Don't tell me you're offering to make one, Christine. Those usually go for at least $500, and with your prices now, I want to donate it, I said firmly. Something spectacular that will raise lots of money for the kids. Maybe a three-dimensional storybook design. I've been wanting to try that technique. April's eyes welled with tears. You amazing woman. The kids would absolutely love that. Consider it my way of giving back some of the support you've shown me this past year. I wouldn't have made it through without you, April. My sister. Speaking of support, April said, wiping her eyes and regaining her composure. Have you thought more about opening that second location downtown? The real estate agent called me yesterday, said the owner of that corner space is getting anxious to sell. I had been considering expanding my business for months. The downtown location would be perfect. More foot traffic, proximity to the business district, and the charming historic building had exactly the aesthetic I wanted for my brand. I'm meeting with the bank tomorrow, I admitted. The loan should be approved by next week. And then, I spread my hands in a gesture of excited anticipation. Sweet Beginnings is going to take over the world. April finished for me, grinning. Or at least the greater metropolitan area. Later that evening, after closing the shop and completing the final preparations for the next morning's orders, I drove home to my cottage. The small house welcomed me with warm lights spilling from the windows. I'd installed smart lighting that turned on automatically at sunset, ensuring I never came home to darkness. As I unlocked the front door, the familiar scent of home enveloped me, cinnamon and vanilla that seemed to permanently infuse the air, thanks to my constant baking experiments. The cottage wasn't large or luxurious like the house I'd shared with Dylan, but it was entirely mine, decorated in colors and styles that reflected my personality rather than compromises made to accommodate someone else's tastes. I kicked off my shoes and padded into the kitchen, where I poured myself a glass of wine and carried it out to the small back porch. The evening was mild, the garden I'd planted in the spring now lush with flowers and herbs. I settled into the comfortable porch swing, allowing the gentle motion to soothe me as I sipped my wine and reflected on the day's unexpected visitor. Seeing Brittany again had stirred old memories, but not in the painful way I might have expected. Instead, the encounter had reinforced how far I had come since discovering Dylan's betrayal. How much stronger, more confident, and more genuinely myself I had become. The shampoo revenge, as April had dubbed it, hadn't just been about punishing Brittany for her role in the affair. It had been my first step toward reclaiming my power, toward refusing to be the unwitting fool in my own home. The plan had been calculating, perhaps even cruel, but it had also been necessary, a catalyst for the transformation that followed. I took another sip of wine, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. I thought about the Christine of a year ago, devastated, humiliated, uncertain of her future. That woman could never have imagined sitting here now. Successful business owner, financially independent, at peace with her past, and excited about her future. The cottage phone rang, interrupting my reverie. Few people had that number, mostly family and close friends. I set down my wine glass and went inside to answer it. Christine, it's James. The voice on the other end belonged to the culinary arts program director who had reached out to me last month. James, hello. How are you? Wonderful, thanks. I'm calling because I've had a chance to review the teaching proposal you sent over, and I'd like to offer you the position. 1 evening class per week. Introduction to Professional Baking. Starting next semester. What do you think? I felt a thrill of excitement. Teaching had never been part of my original plan. But when James had approached me after tasting one of my cakes at a charity event, the idea had taken root. Sharing my knowledge and passion with others, helping them discover their own creative potential, seemed like a natural extension of my journey. I think it sounds perfect, I replied, unable to keep the smile from my voice. I'd be delighted to accept. After finishing the call and making arrangements to sign the contract next week, I returned to my porch swing, a sense of contentment washing over me. Another new beginning, another opportunity to grow. My phone chimed with a text message from April. Just heard from my friend at the courthouse. Guess who filed for bankruptcy today? Hint, he's bald and shares your former last name. I wasn't surprised. Dylan had never been good with money, and without me managing their finances, it was only a matter of time before his spending habits caught up with him. According to April's occasional reports, he'd gone through 3 jobs since the divorce, each ending when his charm wore thin and his mediocre work ethic became apparent. I typed back a simple response. That's unfortunate. Hope he lands on his feet eventually. And I meant it. I no longer wished Dylan ill, though I certainly didn't wish him particularly well either. He simply occupied less and less space in my thoughts as time passed, becoming a chapter in my life rather than a defining aspect of my identity. The swing creaked gently as I leaned back, gazing up at the first stars appearing in the twilight sky. I thought about the woman Brittany had described seeing with Dylan, the latest in what was likely a string of relationships following the same pattern. I felt a moment of sympathy for that unknown redhead who had no idea she was stepping into a role that had been played before. But that was no longer my concern. My life now moved to a different rhythm, one set by the early morning mixing of batters, the precise timing of ovens, the creative challenge of designing cakes that were both beautiful and delicious, by evenings spent reading or gardening or having dinner with friends who valued me for myself, not for what I could provide. As darkness settled fully over my garden, I gathered my empty wine glass and headed inside. Tomorrow would be another busy day at Sweet Beginnings, 3 custom cake orders to complete, a catering job for a local business lunch, and a meeting with the bank about financing my expansion. I moved through my evening routine with practiced ease. Washing my face, brushing my teeth, changing into comfortable pajamas. As I climbed into bed, I noticed the framed motto I'd hung on the wall when I first moved in, words that had become something of a personal mantra: the best revenge is living well. I smiled as I turned out the light. If that was true, and I believed it was, then my revenge was complete and ongoing, sweeter than any cake I could bake, more satisfying than any momentary triumph. In the darkness of my bedroom, in the home I had created for myself, I closed my eyes and fell asleep with the peaceful certainty that the life I was building day by day was exactly the one I was meant to live. Not despite the betrayal that had once shattered my world, but because of how I had chosen to rise from those broken pieces, creating something new and wholly my own. And as for the expensive shampoo that had started it all, I had switched brands entirely. My new favorite cost a quarter of the price and worked just as well. Some luxuries, I had discovered, weren't worth their cost. But others, like independence, self-respect, and the courage to begin again, those were priceless.